Latin is a dead language. Nobody speaks it. There's no native speakers. Why would I want to learn that language? Number one reason is it's just fun. Number two, it's really related to our culture and our English language. So this applies in particular to people who know English and also anybody who knows the Romance languages. And by the way, if you're living in Latin America and you're wondering why it's called Latin America, it's because the languages over there were derived from Latin, mainly Spanish and Portuguese. And no, I can't speak Spanish or Portuguese, although it's pretty easy to understand simple Spanish if you know some French, because the countries are right beside each other and there's a lot of words that are similar in the two languages. So back to the main topic, why should you learn Latin? Number one, a lot of words in the English language are coming from Latin. It can help you to understand the language. So when some smart fellow in a magazine said that Donald Trump's behavior was pueresque, most people wouldn't know what that means. But I knew what it meant, because puer, or poor, depending how you pronounce it, is a boy. So he's just saying that Trump had boy-like behavior. So I was able to figure out the meaning because I knew some Latin. The other interesting thing about knowing some Latin is that it pops up all the time in English. And it's really, 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 really difficult to see if you're an English speaker, because you can't see the forest for the trees. That's an English expression that basically means if you're in the forest, you can't see it because you're in the middle of it. You can see the trees, but you can't see the shape of the forest. It's the basic problem that astronomers have. They can see galaxies with the Milky Way. It's hard for them to visualize what the Milky Way looks because we're in the Milky Way. Same problem. So some examples of this is of words that are related to Latin that you might not know are manuscript, manual labor. And the reason they're related to Latin is that this is manu, M-A-N-U, in Latin, manu. So, manual labor, manuscript. See, that's where the word came from. And there's other weird words like valedictorian. You wonder where that word came from. It's really long, strange sounding word. Well, if I were to leave you, I would say vale, actually vale, well, depends how you pronounce it, V-A-L-E, and that's the root of valedictorian, the person who gives the farewell speech at a high school or some other school like that, university. So there are all of these words in English that have Latin roots. So that's one reason you might want to learn Latin. Another reason to learn Latin, and it's probably the best reason, is that the structure of the language is it's fairly different from English. So Latin is a highly inflected language with a case system. And that's why you can flip the order of the words around without changing the meaning of the sentence, whereas you can't do that in English. So that's one thing you're going to learn in Latin. You're going to learn the case system. The other thing is that the main sentence structure is different in Latin. In English, it's subject, verb, and object. And in Latin, it's subject, object, and verb, usually. So when you first see those sentences in Latin, when you're learning it, it seems really strange if you're an English speaker with a different ordering of the words. Now, once you get used to the ordering of the words in Latin, you'll recognize when people are cheating, when they take English and they translate it directly into Latin without rearranging the order of the words. And I've seen this on the web. People do that, and the Latin that they end up with sounds very unnatural. It sounds just absolutely terrible. Well, not sounds. I mean, I'm just reading it, and I'm thinking of how it would sound if you pronounce these sentences in that order. Not very good at all. So once you get accustomed to the different word order, it's going to loosen up the way that your brain functions. You'll become more flexible, more adaptable. And that's a big problem in our society right now. We've gone to these public schools, and all the students are taught similar curriculums, and there's not a lot of diversity in how they think. In fact, if they think differently from everybody else, they're chastised, they're criticized, they're punished. But with Latin, you'll be rewarded. You'll learn a new language. You'll be able to adapt to other languages more easily. And hopefully, that's going to carry over to your life, so you can solve your own problems in your life by being more flexible. So I view that as the big plus of learning Latin. And it doesn't have to be Latin. There are other languages, I think, but I'm not sure, that German has the same word order as Latin. And other languages have their own idiosyncrasies, such as Hebrew and Arabic, which are written from right to left. So, I mean, you show something in a mirror to somebody who reads Arabic in English, and they're not going to have any problems reading it. At least that's what I would assume. So, if you learn languages that have a different order for reading the sentence, you're going to gain some skills there. So, that's the advantage to learning those languages. And then there's other languages with different character sets, like Greek and Chinese and Japanese, which obviously I'm not going to learn, because I'm not going to spend 10,000 hours trying to learn the character set of Chinese. And they've got not just one, but they've got the traditional, they've got the simplified, and they've got the pinyin. So I just consider that if you're thinking about learning Chinese. It's an awful lot of work, which brings up the point of, when you're picking a language, just think about how much time you're going to be spending learning that language and how difficult the language is. So for me, it was just French, using the grammar translation approach, which is not fun and not very effective, or you could use the natural method, which I like. And then the other language that I spent a lot of time learning, obviously, was Latin. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe to the channel. Appreciate a thumbs up. Take care, and I'll see you in the next episode.